Welcome to Linux Essentials, the series where we demystify Linux one piece at a time. In this first episode, we're tackling something that trips up almost everyone coming from Windows or Mac, the Linux file system. Forget drive letters like C or D. In Linux, everything lives inside one big tree, and that tree starts at a single point called slash. Think of this as your mental map for finding your way around any Linux system. So let's name the problem first. When you open a Linux system for the first time, it genuinely feels alien. No C, drive, no D. Drive, just these cryptic folders like F, etc. and Vafra scattered around. It's easy to feel lost. But here's the good news. Linux is actually simpler than Windows once you see it clearly. There's just one tree growing from a single root, and everything, every file, every program, every device lives somewhere under that slash. So let's put that into one clean sentence you can hold on to. The Linux file system is one single tree of folders, starting at the root, that lone forward slash, and every file, every drive, every device hangs somewhere off it. There's just one root, not a handful of letters. Everything you'll ever touch is a file of some kind, and a path. That's simply the route you take through the tree to get there. Now let's actually look at that tree. At the very top sits the root, just a single slash, and branching out underneath are the main folders you'll meet again and again. Bin for programs, etc. for configuration, home where your personal files live, var for things like logs and changing data, and USR for installed applications. And here's the key contrast with Windows. There's no C drive or D drive. Plug in a USB stick or an external drive, and it simply shows up as a folder somewhere inside the same tree, usually under Authority Element or Media. So out of all those branches, which ones will you actually touch day to day? Really, just 4. Home is where your documents, downloads, and settings live. Think of it as your personal space. Etc. is where the system keeps its configuration files, the knobs and dials that make things work the way you want. Bin and USR bin hold the actual programs you run, and var quietly collects logs and other things that change over time. Most days, you'll be hopping between home for your stuff and etc. when you're tweaking how the system behaves. Now let's quickly walk past the rest of the branches, just so nothing feels mysterious later. TMP is scratch space that gets wiped on reboot, and root is the admin's personal home. Easy to confuse with itself, but it's a different thing. Dev treats your hardware as files. Imminent and media are where USB sticks and extra drives show up. Opt is for third-party software you add yourself, and proc is a live virtual window into the running system. Don't try to memorize all of these. Just knowing they exist and roughly what they're for is more than enough for now. Now that you have the tree in your head, let's talk about how you actually point at things inside it. There are 2 flavors of address. An absolute path always starts at the root slash. Something like Joe home, Anna notes. XT is a complete, unambiguous location that works no matter where you currently are. A relative path, on the other hand, starts from wherever you happen to be standing. Just notes.txt means in this folder, 2 dots means 1 level up, and docs means a subfolder right here. Same destinations, just described differently. And to make those addresses even faster to type, Linux gives you a handful of single-character shortcuts worth memorizing. A lone slash means the root, the very top of the tree. The tilde is your home folder, so cd-brts instantly drops you back there from anywhere. A single dot means right here. 2 dots means 1 level up. And a dash is the clever one. cd bounces you back to whichever folder you were in just before. Tiny symbols, huge time savers. Now that you know how addresses work, let's meet the 3 commands that do almost all your navigating. pwd answers the question, where am I? By printing your current location in the tree. ls shows you what's inside the folder you're standing in, the files and subfolders around you. And cd is how you move. CD docs walks you into a folder, and CD steps you back up one level. That's it. PWD, LS, CD, navigation, sorted. Here's an idea that really sets Linux apart. Almost everything on the system shows up as a file somewhere in that tree. Your documents, obviously, but also your hardware, like the disk at White Dev SDA or your keyboard, and even live system information under proc, which reflects what the kernel is doing right now. That's the beauty of the single tree. One consistent way to read, write, and inspect just about anything, all using the same familiar tools. Now, while we're exploring this tree, you'll notice that a plain ls doesn't always tell the whole story. Any file or folder whose name begins with a dot is treated as hidden, not secret, just tucked out of sight to keep things tidy. That's where your personal settings live, in dot files like bashrc or .config. Add the A flag and Linux reveals everything, hidden entries included. Speaking of tidiness, let's clear up a few myths that trip up almost every newcomer. First, slash and slash root are not the same. The lone slash is the top of the entire tree, while slash root is simply the admin user's home folder sitting inside it. Second, forget C drive and D drive. Extra disks and USB sticks don't get letters. They mount as folders within that same tree. And finally, those hidden dot files we just met. They're not protected or secret. The dot is housekeeping, not a lock. With those myths out of the way, let's lock in a few habits that'll save you headaches down the road. Keep your personal work inside /home. And if you ever feel lost in the tree, just type PWD to see exactly where you are. Lean on the tab key to autocomplete paths and get comfortable with the shortcuts tilde, dot, and dot. On the flip side, steer clear of editing system files in /itsodra without knowing what they do. Don't store anything important in /tmp because it gets wiped, and never delete files you don't recognize. Now that you know the lay of the land, let's pick up the tools to actually explore it. Use PWD to print where you are, ls or ls-a to list what's around cord, including hidden files, and cd to move between directories. When you want a bird's eye view, tree shows the whole structure, find helps you hunt down a specific file, and do-h tells you how much space each folder is eating up. 6 small commands, and suddenly the whole tree opens up. Let's pull it all together. Linux is one single tree rooted at /, no drive letters to juggle. And within that tree, home is your personal space, etc. holds configuration, and var keeps the logs. Paths either start at the root with / or start from wherever you currently are. And remember the shortcuts, tilde for home, a single dot for here, 2 dots to step up one level, master PW'd, ls, and cd, and you can already navigate the entire system with confidence. And here's the one mental model worth holding on to. At first, Linux can feel like random folders scattered everywhere, but really, it's a map. One tree growing from / where every single file has a clear address. Start at the root, or start at your home, and any filing you need is just a series of folders away. Hold that picture in your head, and the rest starts to click. And once that map clicks, everything else in Linux suddenly has a place to live. Permissions, that's about who can touch each file in the tree. We'll dig into that next time. The command line, config files, servers, even containers and security, they all come back to paths and folders you now understand. So the time you spent learning this tree wasn't just theory. It's the foundation the rest of the series builds on. So where do you go from here? This series is your launch pad. We've covered the file system. File permissions are coming up next. And from there, we move into the command line, users and sudo, then processes and package management. If you want the full guided path from your very first command to using Linux confidently every day, head over to dargslan.com. Courses, no prior background needed. Just pick up where we leave off. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. Think back to your very first days with Linux. What was the thing that tripped you up the most? Maybe it was the missing C drive, those strange folder names like etc. and var, or just feeling lost every time you typed cd. Whatever it was, drop it in the comments below. We've all been there, and your story might help the next person feel a little less alone. And that brings us to the end of our very first stop on this Linux journey. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. This was just the beginning of the Linux Essentials series, and next time we'll tackle file permissions, that mysterious RWX you keep spotting in listings. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one over at dargslan.com.